Game Boy Color classic Link's Awakening DX for, like I said, Game Boy Color. Came out in Japan in June of 93. Well, the original game came out in June of 93 and August of 93 in North America. But the DX version, which was in color on the Game Boy Color, came out in December of 98 in Japan and December of 98 in North America. 3 days apart for some reason. We got it on the 15th. They got it on the 12th. I don't know. But I don't know how calendars work. I don't know if that was a day of the week situation.
Yeah, I think the time change.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
So, yeah, we've talked about in the past about Nintendo, how they like to put these tag categories on their titles. Like the Nintendo 64 has a lot of games that end in 64. Super Nintendo had a lot of games with Super in the title, especially if they were sequels to an NES game. They would always be like, Super Metroid. So, minute they were leaning on Deluxe with the Wii U games that transferred over to Switch. But that said, DX, this is the original Deluxe, and it was a naming convention that they were trying out back in the day. There was Super R-Type DX, Tetris DX, and then they had Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, which was what the DX stood for. But I think it was like a passing fancy for them because they literally all of those games out in the 98 to 99 year. So it was like for 1 year, they were like, all right, DX, that's our subtitle for Game Boy games. And they kind of like gave up on it.
Yeah, I just thought that it was the same Elon Musk justification of like, oh, like the letter X is just a cool letter.
Yeah,
just a cool letter. So because I'm a wrestling fan, and like D-Generation X was the exact same time as the D games. So I don't know. I was thinking about other things in pop culture, like we had D-Generation X also in the late 90s, which tormented so many school teachers during that time. So the DX, it looks cool.
What did you think of the game, though? Because I know you're going through like a whole Zelda playthrough, and I know you love the remake. So what did you think of finally tackling the original?
I guess because I spent a little bit of time going. I never played the original, so I went back a little bit to see what the original was like, and then Game Boy Color. Feel any difference between the original and the DX version besides like, I guess the mouse photographer and all those other things, the extra things.
So if anybody doesn't know, they did change is like Harrison said, there's a photographer that tied in with the Game Boy camera. You were able to print these things that he would take pictures of. And then they also had a bonus dungeon that they added, which, because Game Boy Color games, I guess, would play on an original Game Boy, this was their way of trying to like force you to buy a Game Boy Color if you didn't already have one, because to do the dungeon, you need to be able to see the colors. Like the puzzles are color based. So that was their way of getting you. So they added that dungeon. It's pretty much just colored in the original game. So there's not much, there literally is no difference. They just colored the original game. Same music, same sprites, same everything.
Time was there a feedback of from people who like could not see color? Like, because like my dad, dad,
not that I know of.
Like my dad wouldn't have been able to complete that dungeon. Since I started out with like the remake, which I really love, and I gotta say it's really nice to be able to use those extra buttons, like the X and Y buttons for items, and then have your A button to like interact. It's been so long, but
yeah,
I know
quality of life improvements.
I know a big criticism because this game started as a Link to the Past, correct? Like they wanted to make Link to the Past for for Game Boy, but then it turned into Link's Awakening.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
a
I've
big
I've heard that.
criticism, a big criticism was one, it's going to be on an 8-bit console, handheld console, and two, there's only two buttons. So, two buttons, and you have of items that you have to switch around from. So I think the Switch version, like the remake, offers some really nice quality of life improvements because we have those extra buttons that I'm kind of looking at the DX version going, why not? You know? Because we have it now. I
Yeah, I think
think
they just want they for some reason they want to stay pure. Because the DX, the Game Boy Color also only had those two buttons. So for some reason, Switch Online doesn't want to mess with that. I mean, we saw that with the Super Mario remakes on the Game Boy Advance as well. That button layout was really weird.
so. I mean, it'd be a nice option, but I'll bring it back. Find the color choice kind of bold in this game.
Yeah, and I think that was intentional for the time. I think they wanted Game Boy Color games to really pop when you saw the screenshots in game magazines, because that was what sold games back then. That people weren't going online and looking at gameplay trailers. They weren't looking at trailers at all. You get to see a commercial on TV maybe. But so I think that was intentional to make the game really pop on a magazine page.
I think so too, and I know something that you really want to talk about, so I'll send it over to you. I love champs in Zelda games. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I made a list of all the cameos that are in this because it's in this weird dream environment, and they decided to. There's so much to talk about this game that there's no way we're going to be able to do it all this episode, but um, because there's like a whole reason behind why there's all these Mario characters in the Zelda game, or Nintendo characters, I should say. You can find interviews with the developers where they talk about how they didn't even they just did it funny basically, and I think even like forgot that Shigeru Miyamoto was going to see this at some point, and, and they were like, "Oh wait, we forgot to ask if we're allowed to do that." But yeah, anyway, so the Chain Chomp is in there. The Goombas are in there. You've got Kirby making a cameo as an enemy. You've got Piranha Plants, Shy Guys, Yoshi as a plush doll, and Wart from Super Mario Brothers 2, who we always talked about wanting him to come back. You got Wart in there as they change his name. I forget what they changed his name to, but it is Wart.
It's Wart.
It is a pretty small overworld map. Do a good
Like
job of stretching it out by constantly throwing roadblocks in the way.
they do an excellent job. I think if you like look like top down from like the overworld map, uh
Oracle
use
games might be smaller now that I think of it, but they end up extending it by having I think Oracle of Seasons might have a really small map, but you're constantly changing the seasons, so that makes up for it type thing.
I wonder, do you think there was ever a bigger for, how do you, is it Marin or Marin?
I
The
I don't but she's definitely like it's funny because her and her dad are definitely like Malin and Talon from Ocarina of Time, which would come down the road. It's weird that those ideas got recycled.
I'm very interested in her character, and you know what? It's kind of see someone so enthralled with Link. No offense to Zelda, it's to her, but like it's kind of nice to like, because it sure seems like Marin like really, let's say she wants to like tell Link something at the end, but like she really cares for him. Like just thinks that he's like really special. So I wondered, like, thought about having her in future games, or if that was the plan when they originally thought of this character.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I
if
think
you,
the idea just evolved into what we saw in Ocarina of Time, and then they haven't really done much with it since. Like, I can't think there might be something similar like Princess, but definitely not in Wind Waker or any of the other 3D Zeldas that have come after.
is never like I think she's featured in like a Smash game, like
Yeah,
all the other one-time characters or whatever. Did you see Verge actually did an interview last week, the Joker of Twin Peaks, Mark Frost, and they talk
I saw.
about Link's
Yeah, I
Awakening.
saw that you sent that, and I looked at the date on the article, and it was written very recently, and that surprised me because basically I know I've heard that somewhere before, but I don't know where. So it's like it's not new information, but I also don't know where I got it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's Twin Peaks influenced this the creepy dream feel for sure.
So it came out in 1990, and that's kind of interesting. It just that
You know, it
it
was
was a
like the X
coincidence.
Files probably had the same kind of target audience. Like it was that one of those type of shows.
Yeah, which games were inspired by the X Files? Yeah,
That's a good point.
yeah. Overall, I love this. I personally wouldn't play this version only because I'm gonna play the Switch version if if
I
I'm gonna
pref-
sit down and play it.
I prefer the music in the original. I'm just gonna go out and say that. And I wish the remake had that Super Mario RPG remake option where you could
Option,
listen
yep.
to the original music instead. I found myself. I remember that was one of my first impressions when I first got that remake and did my first playthrough. Was I'm disappointed in some of this music in a few of the areas. Disappointed in some of this music in a few of the areas because I grew up with this game. Some of the music in it is just so iconic, and I felt like the updated versions were not as good. Specifically, the mountain, the music when you're on the mountain. I can't think of the name of the theme. Was much better in the original, in my
So,
opinion.
will you play this version then? Would you play?
No, I think I'll always play the remake, like you said, but I do wish that I could get that original music back. That's something I'm always going to
For sure.
miss. And I'm sure there are times I would go back and play this version. I'm not saying I'm never going to play this version again because there's definitely a charm and a nostalgia to that original look. But I think at least the next few times I play through this game, it's definitely going to be the remake. We didn't even
Which
talk about like one thing I think
mhm,
listeners should look into if they're interested in this game is because I don't have all the details on it here. I was a little busy this week, but did you hear about the contest they had when this launched where they had a train ride? It was cross country train trip where people were given copies of the game and the first person to finish the game won some prize, and like the whole point of it was to show that like this was a game you could finish in a sing. The Game Boy was good enough that the batteries would last and you could play through this full game on a single train ride. Was kind of what they were trying to promote.
what kind of batteries though, Nintendo?
Um,
Nintendo, you don't make batteries.
I think there was in the battery life of the system, but like they I don't know, this is a kind of an event that's worth looking into because there's 2 videos about it. I guess there was a guy on the ride that they thought he died because he like went into a cabin and like they were pounding on the door and he wouldn't answer the door, but it turned out he just fell asleep and he was like a deep sleeper. Part where I guess somebody should have won the contest, but they weren't eligible to win for some reason. But they were actually the first one to finish, but they were just there for the fun of it, and they weren't eligible for the contest. So the person who won technically came in second place. Um, so yeah, I don't know. There's YouTube videos about this competition. It sounds wild. I guess they had to change the train route at a certain point because the tracks were closed on the original planned route or something. I don't know. Look it up. That's all I'm saying. I don't have all the facts.
That's
I just know it's an interesting story.
that sounds super cool. I mean, like today you would just do a Twitch stream. I mean, you'd have people you'd have people would race and you would just do it from your own home. I could imagine being on a train because his my strategy would just be to try to annoy everyone next to me. Like don't shower for a few days, you know? Like that would be my strategy. Like try to make everyone else miserable to make up for the fact that not so good at video games. That's what I would do.
So where would you rank this?
This is kind of special. I'm gonna put it at number 4. So
Wow.
number 4 would be above Ocarina of Time, definitely above that, and it's below Mario Brothers 3 and Zelda: Link to the Past. This is my problem. This is what I've been thinking about a lot this week. Thing is that I have to rank Link's Awakening lower because there is a Switch remake. To rank Link to the Past higher because, well, one, it's awesome, but two, not really a better way for me to play it right now, besides like the online system. So I wonder if we had a Link to the Past remake, where my rankings would be, because the main reason I'm doing it this way is because there's no Link to the Past remake. I think that's the main reason why I'm putting them the way they are.
I'm ranking it a little bit lower than you. It's still at the top of my list, though. I put it at number 6. So my top 5 right now are A Link to the Past, Toe Jam and Earl, Minish Cap, Koholint Island, and Ocarina of Time. So those are all the games above it. I put this right below Ocarina of Time. But honestly, and then below that is a bunch of Mario games. So honestly, I was thinking this week. Like, I bet if I had to, I could just play Zelda and Mario games for the rest of my life. If it was like, those memes that you see where it's like, could you live in this shack for a year for $1 million? Like, it's like, could I only play Mario and Zelda games for the rest of my life for $1 million? I think I could.
Well,
It's in good company.
If we ever get to in the future, I would like to do I'd like to do a segment of like the stranded on an island segment. It's like, oh, yeah, you're stranded on an island. You can only play 5 games for some reason.
Ooh.
For something you only 5 games, in this hypothetical situation. So, and which would would those be? You can think about it, because it might not be your 5 favorite games. It would have to be 5 games that you could just play a lot.
Yeah, because like, for example, there's a lot that goes into that because, for example, Ocarina of Time here is in my top 5, but I don't think I'd pick it for that because I've played it so many times that I'm like, do I really want to play this? I've played it like 50 times. Do I want to play it 50 more? Or do I want to put something in there that I know I also like but haven't played as much? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
Right. Or like I could pick Breath of the Wild because like I could put 200 hours into a single playthrough, but like it wouldn't be on my list. But like if you wanted to put like Mario RPG on there, that's a 20-hour game that you're going to be playing, over and over again, which, well, you have. So
Yeah.
maybe it's not the example, but you know what I mean. Like